So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Crypto Art panel, where today we're going to be talking about the future of art, culture, and investment with our absolutely stellar lineup of guests. So, welcome to everyone on the stage and to our listeners. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Hi.
So, hey everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so first some official things. The episode is proudly brought to you by our friends at Bitcoin Live DB, who are at the forefront of decentralized broadcasting. They offer us affordable streaming services and education in the digital asset space, focusing on Bitcoin, crypto, Web3, and NFTs. So thank you to you, Nick, for bringing us all together today.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to extend our gratitude to our sponsors, Roundly X, and partners Quantum Economics, for making this event possible today. To kick it off, I'd just like to introduce myself quickly. I'm GoodKitty. I'm the founder of the Bitcoin Art Collective, and I am extremely excited to be hosting this panel today. So thank you very much for having me. The Bitcoin Art Collective is really a place for creators to come together with collectors, with a focus on kind of helping creators build their careers in Web3. And I do that through Omi Gallery and Stacks Mixtapes, Omi focusing on art and Stacks Mixtapes on music. And both of those on Bitcoin and a Bitcoin L2 called Stacks. And I've worked in music and the art industry for 25 years. And I'm extremely passionate about Web3 and what it can do for artists and musicians. I also host Art on Stacks, which is a weekly show on Twitter. And there I explore stacks in Bitcoin. I write GK Insights. That's a bi-monthly newsletter where I focus on the interplay between Bitcoin and stacks and how that kind of works through music and art. My co-host today is Nick. Nick founded Bitcoin Live DB with his brother Jan back in 2018, and Nick is Bitcoin centrist. He has a passion for art, freedom, and all things decentralized. He has a master's in philosophy and a minor in culture anthropology, and from my experience, a very interesting conversationalist. So I'm going to enjoy chatting with you today.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we've got the privilege today, as you can see, by all the faces on your screen, of hosting an extraordinary panel of guests, each a trailblazer in their respective fields, right? And I'm sure this conversation is going to be interesting, hopefully a bit controversial, and a wonderful journey for both of us and our listeners. So let's get things started off with a brief intro to each of you. I'd like to welcome the panelists again. We've got Colburn from the Museum of Crypto Art. The Museum of Crypto Art is an absolute beacon of sovereignty, market access, and of bringing creative freedom to digital artists and crypto culture. So welcome, Colburn.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you for
also
having
joined. Yeah, great to have you. I look forward to chatting to you later. We're also joined by Andres Zickelbaum, an artist who channels erotic energy and magical realism through his unique style. Welcome also to Styled Pigeon, an artist who pushes the boundaries with surrealism, pop culture, and AI and digital art. So welcome to you. Also, Freak Jesus. Freak Jesus is a Portuguese concept artist inspired by punk rock and who blends childhood nostalgia with their digital painting. George Boyer, welcome to you. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here.
George is a collage. Yeah, welcome. George is a collage artist and a digital illustrator, and with a deep passion for the unconventional. we are waiting for a couple of other guests. Hopefully they'll join us soon, but finally and certainly not least, welcome to Marjan, who, like many others on this panel today, is an award-winning digital artist. Marjan is an innovator in 3D computer graphics and digital media, and I'm looking very much forward to getting into your beautiful artwork. So yeah, thank you very much, panelists. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. So that's just a brief introduction for our listeners to who this panel is. But I'd like to hand it over to each of you now, just so that you can maybe expand a bit on my brief introduction, maybe a little bit about your journey as an artist before crypto, how you took the step into becoming a digital artist as part of this kind of historic renaissance that we're going through, and your experience here so far. And then once we've kind of met or gone through the introductions, then I'm going to lead us through a conversation, right? Exploring what this renaissance is and how digital technology is reshaping art. And once we've kind of really got into that, we'll move on to a segment on the current culture and collector experience, and then go on to explore how the perception have changed with digital art. And finally, then, to end things off, I'm going to come back to everybody, just kind of go around the room, just to get a deeper understanding on what your personal achievements have been, and how you see the role of digital art in your future, and what we can expect from you guys going forward. So yeah, let's kick things off. Let's go around the room. Hear from each of you. And so, yeah, I think let's start with the lady in the center of the room. Marjan, welcome.
Okay. So I'm actually considered as a pioneering digital artist. My first exhibit at computer animation was on a Commodore 64. I recently put up a reel, was done on a Commodore 64 back in 1984. I recently put up a reel of old stuff from the 80s and 90s on my marjan.com domain, which you can see. So you can see all the pixelated art of the 80s, 90s, so on and so forth. But so I mean, this is it. I mean, my life has been digital art. And I'm actually working with Annika and Expanded Art on some of the early work I did as a featured artist from Prodigy Inc., which was the #2 internet company in 1996. So I'm even putting together old stuff like that with Expanded Art and Annika now. But my history in my life is digital art, period. And in terms of crypto art and NFTs, I entered the Web3 space well, first of all, I was already established as a digital artist with numerous gallery, museum exhibitions, commissions, things of that kind. And I had, of course, my, art hacks on the internet, several of which had gone viral with millions of views. So I had an established sort of social media community built around my art. So this was all before I came into NFTs and crypto art. And so I entered the Web3 space in 2020. And I went on Super Rare, and I immediately fell in love with the scene for several reasons. And I always say this, that over the course of the decades, I always felt like, since my work was always animation primarily, I never could sell the animations. I had to turn them into prints or sculptures or installations, or it had to be materialized in some way to sell it. But for me, the work as it was digitally was good enough. And that's what I believed had to sell. But there was no mechanism, no ecosystem really in a meaningful way. I mean, yes, sell encrypted, USBs with a holographic certificate of authentication, but that itself wasn't the right way either. So for me, NFTs was the structure, the ecosystem, the technology that I've been waiting for decades. And not just me, also other digital artists like me. So that was like the first thing I fell in love with. And as I mentioned, the second thing was, and this is more in regards to crypto art, is that like I said, I was, a pretty high profile artist of the early internet. A lot of that work can be looked up on the web archive. That video I have on my domain of the older work, all of those shots are from the web archive. I mean, I just Googled it, the different years to kind of find the work and show it. So I was part of the early Internet 1.0 generation, and I remember when the cypherpunks came out, like around the time Stevenson did his book, and like in the late 90s, and so I was sort of familiar with the ideals of the cypherpunks. I honestly, like back then, I was like, what are these guys talking about? Because, I mean, they were really talking about digital ownership of digital assets as a basis for all freedoms on the internet. And so for somebody like me, it's why is that necessary? We're already free on the internet. We can already do whatever the hell we want. So I didn't get it. And I'm confessing to it. But today, with all the encroachments on freedom and civil liberties, especially in terms of the internet, the digital and the metaverse, et cetera, I'm like, wow, the cypherpunks were right. I mean, they really were. So I have some understanding and appreciation of the philosophy that eventually led to decentralization of finance, Bitcoin, and crypto art. And I also, I have to say, I because I'm an internet native and a digital native, I feel very comfortable in the crypto art sort of ecosystem and scene, get along really well with the other artists. For me, this is more of my home, if you may, than the traditional world of contemporary art, which has always made me feel like an outsider. So this is my home. This is my life. Yeah. And one last thing I wanted to mention, because, I have combined between commission generative works and one-on-one sales, close to about 240 Ethereum in sales till date. So I've sold into a lot of collections on many different platforms. But something I did this fall, which I think is very important, not just for me, but for other crypto artists and digital artists, is I finished a commissioned permanent sculpture and AR at Royal Hillsborough Castle Park in the UK, which is a residence of the royal family, the King of England, when he's visiting. Cats, please stop. When he's visiting northern UK, Ireland. And this is the type of traditional commission work that would never go to digital artists. I really want to take a moment to say, like, hey, we have arrived. So that's it.
Yeah. This is one of the things I absolutely love about this space.
Hey.
The amount of art that we didn't get to see prior to what's going on now is just extraordinary. So what a story, because your work is absolutely incredible. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Do you guys shall I just kind of pick out names, or should we just, I think let's go to Styled Pigeon. You're at the top, right?
I think that every space needs a good solid blue collar voice. And so I decided to start doing Web3 stuff. My background and experience as an artist is quite limited. I guess I've always been an artist, but haven't always been doing art necessarily. The way that I got involved in Web3 was because I was talking to Purple Suede 22, who happens to be my cousin. Actually, we run Gingerly together. And he was telling me about all of the wonderful things that Web3 and NFTs could do. And I was like, well, why has no one heard about it? And he's like, I don't know. Right. And so I told him, well, I really think that a sales voice could be helpful. And so I brought that to the table and started doing some of my art on stacks, doing things surrounding just all digital art surrounding the idea that values are of significance and should be adopted, less with a focus on which values and more of the focus on the idea that you should adopt values in general. Briefly philosophically, because I think that a lot of the value systems that we have had in place have been degraded or disintegrated from our society in some sense. And I think that it's really important that we continue doing that so that we can maintain the underlying substrate of our societies and prevent them from falling into violence and all of that stuff. And at the time I was going through some stuff personally where I was like, I want to dress up a little bit more, show a little bit more self-respect for myself. And so I started out doing the Styled Pigeons, pigeons obviously representing kind of the everyman. They're in every major city. and just put them on male male models and stuff. It was a lot of fun getting started. So that's kind of my very brief story about how I ended up getting here. Met Nick and Bitcoin Live through John, my cousin, again, as we were starting a podcast for just beginners. And basically, I would love to continue to play the somewhat comical and ignorant idiot in these spaces, because I think that a lot of people are in that spot where they're going, I don't even know what questions to ask necessarily, much less am I in a room with experts who know. And so, I mean, I guess that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with art all the time, but that's my go-to mission in this space, is to be the liaison between the cyberpunks, for example, or cypherpunks rather, and the everyman, your uncle, your cousin, your nephew, or whoever who has no exposure or connection to this. I play video games and work out, and I work a 40-hour job. I'm a normal dude, and that's the value that I try to bring, is being that connection between you all and just random people.
Yeah, and isn't that an incredible thing? That's another thing that I love about this space, is that it doesn't really matter. I mean, as important as it is, in what you've achieved with your career, it also doesn't really matter who you were before you came here, because this is a stage for everybody, so yeah, I appreciate that too.
Yeah, I do feel like we're all trying to start over in some sense, right? Like the socioeconomics and the hierarchies and things have kind of gotten to a point where they're a little shaky and a little bit too top heavy. And now we're going, hey, why don't we like shake the board up a little bit, like etch a sketch this thing just a tad, and see where the pieces land, and see if we can do something better than we've done in the past. So anyway, sorry, I'm done.
Yeah. All right, Colburn. Hello and welcome, representing the Museum of Crypto Art. Lovely to meet you.
The pleasure is all mine. My background is in economics and psychology. Started, I guess, out in investment banking, did it for 6 months. Despised the work, went over to United Nations for 2.5 years, built an infrastructure bank in East Africa, and joined a wealth management firm founded by vegan Buddhists, and then joined a private family office. And that exploration was really how, within the current constraints of the economic system, could we effectuate change for positive social impact. And what I learned through that journey was really that we couldn't. And what I had been taught in school, that capital was supposed to be free flowing and moving to new ideas and new values, I found it just to be the opposite, that capital was cement, ingraining institutions, their power, and really the needs of the top. So when I discovered crypto, I recognized that in order to change the system, you had to change the money. And I started my early journey in crypto on the finance side before founding the museum in April of 2020, because I came to the subsequent realization that it was really the art that was going to change the hearts and minds of the people. And we had this fantastic distribution system called the internet to spread these global images. It's how we came together as people. And I began aggressively collecting, and I built a foundation to spread the idea that the art was the medium. The artists were, the evangelizers of the idea that the money could be changed, that crypto could be a better system for all things. So, I love experimenting with new systems, new designs, structure, large-scale collaborations. Founded a project recently called 01.art, which is an innovation, I think, beyond marketplace. And really I tried to take a step back when everybody is focused kind of on the short term and maybe profiteering in the minutia of that moment. What are the societal trends that are driving us?
Beautiful, thank you. It is indeed the artists that are going to tell the story, isn't it? They're going to record it for us, and we're going to know what happened through the words and the pictures and the songs that we're going to, I suppose, be taken along that this ride is going to take us along. So thank you. Patrick, hello and welcome. Are you there?
I am. Thank you for having me. Good to see everybody.
Hi.
Some familiar faces.
Hey, Patrick.
Good to see you.
Hi. Welcome. So yeah, do you want to also give us a little intro into yourself?
Sure. I think that just want to echo a lot of what was said before. I think we're at a really interesting moment in time for so many different reasons. And AI is right at the middle of that. I mean, on one hand, I feel like you have AI and the race to general intelligence and how that is going to fundamentally reshape the world, and artists are kind of at the forefront of that. On the other hand, we have the emergence of digital art, which required tokenization. It didn't work before. I know, Marjan's been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for a while. Like, we really needed tokenization to actually make this thing, really fly and have the power that it really should have had this whole time. I think art leads on so many different levels, and if you just look at the sheer ability to impact the world we have now with art versus what we had with art before, you look at the transmissibility of digital work, you look at the sheer number of screens and just how ingrained the digital life is to society now. I feel like we have significantly more ability to make an impact on the world than we ever have had with art. Banksy could throw paint on walls, and that was kind of the extent of it. We have the ability to put art on billboards around the world in front of millions of screens. So, I feel like art is only as valuable as its ability to make an impact in the real world. And I feel like that is something that we are just only beginning to explore right now. So I think that's what makes this a very interesting time, given the gravity of, how technology look like it's going to impact our world, and given art's place in that and our spot right now. So excited for all of it. I think a lot of it's doom and gloom, but I think that we have a unique opportunity in front of us right now.
Indeed. And that's what you guys are all doing. I think each one of you is sort of opening up people's eyes to the possibilities of what it is, to what society looks like, and being able to, like that, to make people look up, and so yeah, I love it. I love your Twitter bio, by the way. Digital disobedient and foreign agent, isn't that what it is?
It is. Thank you.
I love it. Every time I see it, I'm like, God, I love that. Anyway, okay, George. Hello, George. Welcome from Greece.
Hello.
Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
All right, let's hear it from you.
A little bit about my journey. I started 20 years ago as a hangout collage artist. Scissors, glues, paper, all that stuff. I did everything that an artist did back then, exhibitions, used social media, stuff like that. I wasn't really satisfied with everything, actually. And at 2017, I think it was, that I found out about crypto. I got in contact with a platform called Steemit. It was something like Reddit, but on blockchain. It was fascinating. I liked, the community. There was a lot of art there. I got in contact with a lot of artists. And what I really, liked and still consider the most important thing is the cataloging of the art. I mean, we have the opportunity now to, using a smart contract to have our artwork cataloged in a blockchain, which is, probably maybe the hardest material in the future. I mean, in the past, artists used to make their art on a stone or on, objects that they thought that they will last the time, and we see it, all the ancient monuments and stuff like that. But now we have the opportunity to, draw our art on even harder material, which is the digital material, the blockchain. So yes, this is what I believe it's the most important thing with the crypto art. I like that I came at the NFT community at 2020, and I liked also, the vibe back then. It was also the time of the lockdowns and stuff like that, and it was fascinating how we were all, moving so fast, making art, and at the same time, the world was like frozen in time in a way. And that's it, more or less. I mean,
Thank you. Yeah, I think you bring up an important point about the blockchain. Marjan was saying, that, she's been sort of involved in the digital, working in digital art for such a long time. But it was, the question was, what were the value of these pictures on the internet? And, we have this blockchain, this thing called blockchain now, and that is sort of almost now it is an investment, and it's through that sort of channel linking these two up, art and blockchain, and really moving us forward, I think, into art being an actual digital investment.
And also, it's not only, sorry that I interrupt you, Kitty, and it's not also digital art. I mean, people are tokenizing, physical art in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, we can say that all art at some point will be tokenized. I don't want to say everything will be tokenized, but at least the art.
I don't know. It could be.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something impossible in the future.
But I think absolutely. I mean, I think for digital art, in terms of provenance and just keeping that record, I think it serves a very important service there. So absolutely.
Yeah, I also wanted to make a distinction, and I mean, just adding to what George was saying, and I think it's an important distinction. It's like saying photographing. Yeah, ultimately, all artwork gets photographed, but not all artwork that gets photographed is photographic arts. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
so what you have to look at NFTs is that, yes, a painting can be tokenized, but then there's art that's native to that, and and that's different than art that merely uses the function of tokenization versus art that is geared towards the medium and employs its philosophies and aesthetics. So I think a distinction has to be made there.
Yeah, but in a way, it's something that it will affect all kinds of art. I mean, what I'm saying, maybe digital art is the purest form, but now we say that maybe generative art is even the purest form, and I don't know what else could be, but in a way, it will affect all kinds
of. All right, cool. So I can see we're going to really get into a conversation just now. So let's go. We've got another final two introductions. Andre.
Okay, cool. It's my turn. All right.
Yeah. Spotlight's on you.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
My name's Andres. I am a painter, sorcerer supreme, scion of a noble house, fantastic barista, part-time gynecologist. What the fuck else? Titles. I make oil paintings. You might have heard the intro early on. I find that intro incredibly funny. It's still true. The erotic art and magical realism bit is all factual, but not the way you would think. But yeah, I work with a lot of mysticism and magic, and it makes its way into my paintings. And sculptures and collages and AI work and all sorts, and it all kind of comes together to what's the word? It comes together to kind of get to what I see when I'm meditating or when I'm dreaming. And other times it's specifically to pinpoint things that I desire and really focus and hone in on that and put focus on it. Say it's a wonderful house or a great relationship with my fiance or even a great relationship with my dog. I'm also a dog mom. Yeah, I don't have too big a mission statement. I'm very selfish. I'm sorry. I'm not here to save anybody except me and maybe the people around me, right? Crypto art, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. I love making art and the ability to have a really close relationship with my collectors. I mean, what's changed is I can choose to give or not give a percentage to somebody, and there's nobody in the middle when I meet someone that actually appreciates my work. And past that, it's just been about really that. It's the incredible closeness of the community and the technology and everything else. That wasn't so bad, right? That was a pretty good intro. Not too terrible, right? Very
Yeah.
untidy, but not too bad.
No, that was good. I heard erotic, and then that was it. I stopped listening. I was like, thinking.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. No, I'm interested to hear more about that sort of occult themes and erotic themes. So yeah, I find it interesting. So okay, who we got left? Freak Jesus. Hi, welcome.
Hello. So my name is Nuno. I'm from Portugal.
Nuno.
Yeah. I'm known as Freak Jesus. And so I started to make art at the age of 42. So when I went to make art, it was as an NFT artist. So I didn't do any physical art, you know. And so I started at Gnome Origin. And in the beginning, for me, it was always just for the money, you know. I didn't understand the scene, but when I start to understand what the thing that I was in, you know, it was like it blew me away, and yeah, I really enjoy it. And at the first things that I really liked it was the possible to meet so many people, so many artists, and so many collectors that give me some insights, you know. And it was a really like I was like in something new. So I'm a civil engineer, so nothing to do with art. And when I started to make art, I realized that I had this mind as an artist for like since I was a child, you know. But I never like tried to put out, you know. And when I started doing this, it was really amazing. Not only for to put all my feelings and emotions in the art, but also to send some like message, you know. Some like sometimes it's happiness, rage, you know, everything that you have like this insight, and that you can put in your art and show to all the people. And I always have like this care about social problems, like children with needs, you know, and animal care. And I was like a volunteer in a shelter dog for 7 years, and it's also that's something that it's related with me. So I think like art, it gives me to some purpose in life, that is to create. Now I think I want to do like art and to help other people, you know, like children, or in some way. To tell the truth, I at the moment I don't have the in my mind how to do it, you know, but I will find it. And that's the thing that I really want to do. help with my art, help some people or animals or something like that, you know. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, it's incredible how you can. I don't think it was commonplace historically. I think if you're an artist, you're an artist. But I'm finding more and more meeting people who have sort of a career like that, civil engineer for all these years, and now you're able to have this outlet, and to show people your art, which is
I'm having a really hard time
fantastic.
hearing you. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
your microphone,
Yeah.
Kitty.
My microphone isn't good.
Yeah, that's
There we go.
better
now?
much better.
Yeah.
I good now.
Sorry, man.
Sorry, it sounded like you were saying something really interesting, and I wanted to know what it was.
Oh no, that's what I do when I want to sound interesting, but it's not really. I'm gonna mute. Yeah, no, I was just saying how it's incredible how you can get people who, historically it kind of was you were an artist. You couldn't even be, say, an artist and a singer. You had to be one of them. And, this feeling that creativity exists in all of us. It doesn't matter what we do, whether like you're a civil engineer, and yet you can produce the stuff with all this feeling, and you can try to do so much with it. So I found that's a big part of what we're doing as well and what's going on. So really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I've moved to the room, right? Everybody.
No,
Faisal's
So
joined
yeah,
us.
so
Faisal
oh, hello,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you so
Lovely
much.
to have you here.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got
we've
my timing wrong. My apologies. And then kind of realized and joined as fast as I could.
No problem. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Nicolas. Hey, Dre, what's up?
yes, welcome.
Good to see you, Pigeon.
So,
What's up, Asa?
Colburn,
Pigeon,
what's up?
you-
Peace, my man.
So yeah,
Brian.
we've been
go on, Kitty.
we've been going through the room. Yeah, sorry. We've been going through the room. We've just sort of having everybody just introduce themselves, maybe talk about their style or how they got here or what they are. Just a sort of a brief introduction on who you are.
Okay, sure. And I've had a few very intense days, and it's quite late here in Finland. So my apologies if this comes across a little lethargic or something. I'm trying my best not to. But yeah, I've been a professional creative my whole adult life, but it started very early. I was a strange white kid up north in Finland because I started listening to Michael Jackson and James Brown, and I turned my parents' pots and pans into a drum kit when I was 5, and kind of had starry-eyed dreams of rock stardom, and even joined a couple of bands and played the guitar and all these kinds of things. But my somewhat more conservative parents were able to convince me that if I was going to pursue a career in music, then I should at the very least know the notes and even basis of the theory, and that wasn't really something that I was that interested in. But eventually, in film, I was as interested about the theory side as well as the making of it and the philosophy and everything. In film, everything sort of came together for me, and I went to film school in the UK, enrolled in 2000, graduated 2003, and started my own production company. And the dream was to go to Hollywood in the footsteps of Ridley Scott and all the likes. And I just had my mind blown by films by David Fincher, like Seven and Fight Club and those kinds of things. And Fight Club, funnily enough, probably is a part of the seed and how I ended up being in crypto art to begin with. As well as some documentaries that I saw in 2006 or something. But neither here or there. In 2008, I found myself in Finland making television series about educating dogs and everything. And just don't get me wrong, I really love dogs, but that wasn't the A-list Hollywood career that I was after. And I was like, what the fuck's going on here? I need to change gear here immediately. And I got this crazy idea that what if I started body painting on people? And because I knew how to light, I knew how to photograph, I knew how to direct people, I knew how to tell stories, because essentially I think what I was born of a gift with, as well as plenty of different curses. But this one gift that I did have was I suppose, storytelling. And I utilized it in every different kind of way that I could, with cameras and film cameras, writing scripts, directing, editing, all this kind of stuff, and even acting some myself. But then I got this crazy idea that what if I started body painting on people and I helped them go through these emotional processes of letting go of things that might no longer serve them, or help them create a vision for their life, and kind of just and capture these moments as people were kind of processing these things whilst they were in body paint. And then also, even though I didn't know how to paint at all, I started painting and photographing those paintings, and I put it together with Photoshop. And this is now, 15 years ago. And as soon as I saw because I found the first crazy enough lady who came to my home studio to be body painted, and I was so nervous that I made a pot of coffee, and as she entered, I was so nervous to kind of ask her to get undressed and everything that I dropped the whole pan of coffee on the floor and just like a total idiot of myself. And but as soon as I saw the first images come together, and I saw the first artwork called The Escapist in front of me, I knew that my whole life had changed, that I no longer wanted to be a film director, that there was this new thing that just opened, and it was mesmerizing, it was magical. Because when people are in real life body paint in front of you, and especially if you manage to create a space for them where they can go from vulnerability to strength, or really express who they are, they become these alive statues, and it's like this magical space opens, and all of a sudden you're in a different reality. And I didn't need 800 people and a film crew and millions of dollars to do it. I just needed to find one person who I really resonated with, and then just create. And I was able to tell these grand stories through this medium. But so I had essentially, by the time comes in 2017, I went for a coffee with a friend of mine in London. And he said that he's a crypto trader, and he's been trying to find crypto art for his wall about his life for the past 4 days, and he wasn't able to find anything that he liked, and that I should really check it out. And that just opened up a wild ride into crypto art and decentralization. And he linked me up for some Andreas Antonopoulos talks, and the bad crypto podcast guys and whatever. And all of a sudden I was just on this another crazy ride. And I realized that, Bitcoin solves a lot of the problems of the legacy financial system that were very important, but also it was going to be the technology that finally gives me the means to make my digital originals. And I had back then about 300 of them, high resolution, big pieces, that finally they were going to have a value. Because when I tried to go into the art world in 2008, and ever since, almost up until today, people were kind of just looking at me funny, asking, "Where's your all original?" And I said, "Well, I don't have one. I have files, and I need to print them and do all kinds of weird things to them." And then they just said, "Oh, so you sell copies?" And it was this very nonchalant, kind of arrogant brushing off of all the things that I'd put together, and I thought I had something wonderful. But my encounters with the art world weren't really that. And in the crypto art realm, all of a sudden, I found a lot of different interesting polymath people, and they were exploring all different kinds of things about society and beliefs and whatever. And I found a home. So I suppose that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, welcome again. What an interesting story. I think it's just meeting you all and hearing your voices. Just such a diverse group of people. So super excited to get down to the conversation. So yeah, let's get into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at sort of 4 sections or 4 little segments, which I'll lead you through as we go along. And I want to kick it off with talking about how digital tools, I mean, it's going back to a lot of what a lot of you have been talking about, but how digital tools and these platforms that we are seeing sort of day by day growing, how they are expanding the horizons of artistic expression and interaction, and what this sort of, I'd say, renaissance means to each of you, right? Because in my journey, I've been fascinated by how these innovations have empowered artists and how they have reshaped our connections with art and with each other. and where digital art is not just opening new horizons, but really redefining them. So we've got sort of all these technologies, 3D modeling, digital painting, and AI, and they are breaking down these physical constraints of traditional art, as a lot of you have alluded to, and allowing us to explore themes and techniques that were, totally beyond reach, even our imagination. So let's open up the room and talk about this current landscape and your personal experiences. What does it look like to you? So let's keep it loose. I'd like to, rather than just go around to each of you, if you can keep your mics on, feel free to join in when you are inspired to do so. But I'm going to kick it off with a question to Colburn to just kind of get the conversation going. I want to hear from you how you think digital technologies have influenced artists' approach to creation and their expression. And if you can just talk about changes that are going on in art right now and what that evolution looks like to you.
Well, I have to probably be the worst person to talk about this. But I will say what excites me is the artist's current ability to respond to culture as it happens immediately, right? If we are thinking about these as, transmission systems, then what we're left with is really the ability to respond, to critique, to see, to develop and evolve much quicker than we could have. Suddenly, where salons might have been located to geographical spaces, there is no physical space, so there is unbounded potential of kind of the speed at which all of these messages can travel and the influence and ability for somebody to learn and grow and develop, and that unbounded potential is what is exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might have been a really good person to answer that question, because it is. I mean, that's what we're doing. It is about that. So, yeah, is there anybody else who kind of wants to come in here?
Just to be clear, are we talking about the Renaissance or how it relates to the tools of the digital in the 21st century? Which one are we going to go for?
Yeah, I think, well, sort of, the Renaissance that is, not the Renaissance, but this current Renaissance, this kind of current real evolution.
That's actually a really good point you bring up. And, everybody's on my case to write a piece about this. And I'm like, yes, I will. But I'm pretty much in production 7 days a week. So I got to find the time. But, the Renaissance is, of course, the art movement, but it's also a figure of speech for, having a moment with something. And I always say that, art history is full of moments, and not every moment has the same impact as the Renaissance. And not every moment makes the canon of art history. And not every moment has the same sort of influence. So the reason I bring that up is because I think that we are in a moment that can have the Renaissance with a capital R impact. And as opposed to the lowercase r, we're having a moment, Yeah. And because there's been a lot of these moments in the last 30 to 40 to 50 years, like since computer art came out in the 1960s, let's say, since then, there's been many moments. But we're at a critical point where this moment could be as significant for the 21st century as early modernism, or let's say 1924 was 100 years ago. And I think our potential is that. And digital tools are at the heart. When the Style Pigeon was talking, Style Pigeon, I've been self-supporting since the age of 21, and I'm an immigrant from Iran. I immigrated to the United States in 1978. So, and I've supported myself and my family with computer graphics and digital art as a production artist and as a fine arts artist. So for me, it's like, this is what gave me my life. But something that I think is really key, and here and I actually agree with this whole idea that crypto art is full of people that approach art from many different places. I mean, I'm clearly fine arts, but there are a lot of artists who aren't. And I fully respect that. I actually like that kind of high and low of crypto art because it's very much democratized in that same way that the internet is, that Web3 is. And in that regards, it's very different than art of the 20th century. Like, how are we going to be different if we're just replicating the curatorial and artistic practices of modernism and postmodernism? But the way we're different is we're democratized because of the internet. That's the foundation that's holding it all up. We're democratized because of the decentralization of the blockchain, conceptually and also as a technology. And so in that regards, the art movement is like that. It's a mix of high and low. It's a mix of people coming at art from many, many different points. And there isn't a single quantifying, let's say, aesthetic. You got generative, you got the GIF animations, you got 3D, you got AI, there's so many different approaches. And in that regards, that's what's different and new about us.
Marianne,
yeah.
Marianne, do you think that rebirth is only located in sort of the technology, or do you also think there's like this moment in time that...
Thank you for bringing that up. I think we are due for a rebirth in the style of the Renaissance. When I had to do my shotgun MFA, I call it my shotgun MFA because I didn't want to do an MFA. I was a working artist and I started teaching and they said, oh, we want you to become full-time faculty and you have to get an MFA. So I went to go get an MFA. And for my art history credits, I studied with Dr. Jacqueline Frank, who was the leading scholar of Renaissance art in the United States at that time. So I actually know a lot about the Renaissance. And something everybody has to understand is before the Renaissance, artists of the medieval era were one notch above a bricklayer. They were not the rock stars of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. That was the Renaissance. Not only were they like bricklayers, but nobody knew their names. Nobody knew. This was not just in Europe, but also in Asia. In Asian art, it was the same thing. You weren't worth your name on your work. That's how low you were. Something shifted. And the story of the Renaissance, by the way, begins with Giotto, the 16-year-old boy Giotto, the shepherd boy who rendered a sheep so realistically and in such a natural way that nobody had ever seen it before, and he became a great artist. You're talking about a world in which the great people were royalty or clergy. There was no scenario whereby which a shepherd boy could make it that far. And that's the magic of the Renaissance. Artists could become as famous, as accomplished, as influential as clergy, royalty, and entrepreneurs like the Medicis. That created the era of merit, and much of the meritocracy that changed our world, that allowed people with talent and ability to be able to contribute significantly to bring about many of the things we're enjoying right now in this moment, including the internet, where this talk is happening. All of this was merit of individuals. But much of postmodernism has erased that, starting initially with the de-skilling of postmodernism in the arts. And the big complaint now is it's now spread to every other area. So are we rebirthing something? We can rebirth these values of individual merit and meritocracy.
But
Celebrating it, hold on a second, let me finish. But celebrating it in a different way, celebrating it in a global way that's colorblind, allowing that person from Africa, do you see what I'm saying, to compete on equal terms, on the basis of merit, with somebody from Singapore, with somebody from San Francisco, with me in New York City, like all of us on equal footing, on the basis of merit and what we're bringing to the table. This is the Renaissance we can have.
But you could argue that the DIA and all that kind of in the equity and equality movement is the very opposite of that. So
exactly, but that's late stage. That's late stage postmodernism. I mean, 7 years after the fact, we really want to say this is the nascent philosophy of our time? No, this is the dying influence
I think that
It's the dying influence.
I think Marjan's kind of actually arguing specifically for individual sovereignty.
Yeah. No,
because
I
it's
get that. But
viable. Okay, yeah.
I get it.
Sorry.
I get it totally.
All right, cool.
You guys mind if I give a contribution from my side? I'd love to. I mean, Marian, that was amazing. I love that.
Sorry, I'm passionate about this stuff.
Of course, yeah, and it carries, and God bless you for that.
Also, keep in mind, I live in New York City, where I watch talented young artists arrive in the city, and what can they look forward to? And I will tell you what, being a fabricator for a wealthy artist. It's back to the medieval era. They don't matter. They don't count.
So do you also see
the system is really corrupt, and everybody says it in private. So the rebirth part, the Renaissance part, is necessary, and everybody knows it. And if Web3 can bring it about, then more power to Web3. And that's how this moment becomes a Renaissance with a capital R.
Well, so do you see it? Oh, sorry, go on.
Yes. Well, I'll give a little bit of a perspective on how I relate to what you were saying, but also a little bit of how I see the whole thing, because I come from Finland, and Finland is it's 5 million people. It's a minute economy. And it's not something that is known for its Renaissance art like Italy is, where it's the art here has been very bleak, and kind of, we've had masters, of course, who are amazing at capturing what the thing is, but I did very colorful things and innovative things and something, and I couldn't find really a footing here. And it's really, really difficult to make a living in this place as an artist. Even for those who are super artists are struggling to kind of be full-time funded. And we have a national grant system because it's kind of strong social network, Scandinavian country. But essentially, the art, especially since Warhol and the 80s, has been sort of this grants-dominated little circle of friends and this kind of thing. And it's influenced a lot what the artist can or cannot say from a very particular ideological, narrow path. And I couldn't find myself there at all with the kind of things that I was going towards. And what I was so drawn to with the crypto art potential altogether was that I kind of identified, at least from my point, that Andy Warhol really was the previous last avant-garde artist. He really took on something, even though he's not necessarily my favorite artist. I don't particularly enjoy his works, but I understand the cultural context in which he's embedded. But now that sort of became the establishment arts. The Andy Warhol rebellion quickly became what was the now postmodern movement, and that became the government-backed and the socially backed and the everything-backed. And what was so intriguing about crypto art, that it felt like, oh, hold on a minute, there's all of a sudden a few artists who are taking on the central banking system. You know, that's not something that art has ever done before, you know, up in that scale of rebellion and kind of bringing this to the forefront. And that was exciting. And all of these polymaths and everyone who was sort of involved in this whole thing, fixing what was broken about the monetary system, was just something that was mind-blowing to me, that this was all of a sudden possible. So I would still say that the early days of crypto art and those who still hold the spirit of it are the avant-garde of today, even though there's digital art, you could argue, is very contemporary. It's the most contemporary thing and whatever, and NFTs is this and that. But in terms of the actual subject matter that deserves a place in history, that actually carved something that was totally new and unheard of before, was the early crypto art, especially that had it in themes of what crypto was all about, what decentralization was all about, and of course utilizing the technology and so forth. But what it has the potential of doing, because this last 40 years, 50 years of art has been quite narrow of a path ideologically, and kind of what is excluded and included. I really resonate what you were saying with Marianne, that with your merit, all of a sudden, I can be inspired by, let's say, cave paintings or body painting, or all the way up to the most futuristic thing, or building virtual temples and kind of making them my art gallery, or whatever it is. I can bring together Japanese calligraphy with, I don't know, Brazilian nudes. No one cares. Just do what you want, that you're actually passionate about. Put it out there onto the internet, and let's see if you can find a community. And all of a sudden, this gatekeeping that has been in art for the last 50 years, that I really got the blunt runt of, is no longer there. And that was the most exciting thing. And the art world is still playing catch up to even understanding a fragment of just how much the gates have been blown open. But not only the art world, it's also the artists don't understand, because there's still sort of Stockholm syndrome captured by what was for so long what you're allowed to be and what you're not allowed to be. So that was also another thing that was exciting about the crypto art community, is that you had maybe people who didn't have that much of an understanding of art history or art or whatever, but they resonated with the evolution and the revolution of it and went, hey, that person is doing something cool, I'll throw money at it, let's see what happens. And then that spirit of it, even though kind of now dampened down after the first sort of flush of NFTs and the kind of COVID hitting us, I think it'll come back and more mature, and we need this technology for all the things that we're about to do. But that's really the Renaissance. It's like you can do whatever it is that you want and try to find a community for it, be inspired by whatever. And that's what's exciting, and that's not going to die.
Could argue that.
I love what you said. Sorry,
go on,
Nick. I just loved what you said about never before in history have artists taken on the central bank system. So what a powerful thing to say, So thank you. I love it. Gave me goose flesh.
But hold on a second. If you think about it, going back to, the first coins that were minted, they were made by artists. The history of finance and financial exchange involved artists, going back to the ancient.
But they weren't for artists. They were by artists.
Yeah, those were commissioned.
This time it's for.
They had to create the designs and the visual sculptural form that was the coin. Like, you had stones and shells and things of that kind. But finance is born when they had to create an artwork that replaced the shells or gems or things of that kind. And that required visual arts. It required sculpture. It required painting. It required conceptualizing something visually and creating a coin with it. So artists were right there with the beginning of finance and trade and, the barter system.
But Marianne, just to come back to what you said earlier, could you say that's like a shift from collectivism to individualism, like what you described from medieval to Renaissance? And are you seeing the same thing happening now? And would you also say...
what Bessa was describing in terms of the, the hegemony of the art world, academia, institutions, and the way and manner in which it creates a sort of stifling atmosphere where artists have zero freedom of speech is medieval in itself. We have a secular religion, and anybody who's a heretic is an apostate, and they're burnt at the stake, metaphorically speaking.
But they don't have to do it literally anymore.
So we are very medieval. But keep in mind, it took 200 years before the Renaissance was named Renaissance. So the events of Florence, let's say, in terms of the Florentine Renaissance, or even the Flemish and Netherlandish Renaissance, those were localized phenomenons. It took 200 years for it to spread, for people to go, oh, this was a great moment in art history. So, it's not going to take 200 years because the inherent tendency of the technology is towards speed and efficiency. So things that used to take 50 years may take 20 years now. So the things happen a lot faster. But I think that when you look to crypto art, you'll see a lot more heretics. You'll see a lot more digital disobedience, as Patrick said it. You'll see a lot more digital heretics like me. You'll see that a lot more. You're more likely to see that type of apostasy, intellectually, ideologically, artistically, aesthetically, in terms of finance, in terms of technology. You're more likely to see it in crypto art than anywhere else.
Would you also say that sort of that contradiction or a dichotomy between collectivism and individualism is like the same as
look at all of us. Everybody does completely. Look at everybody on this panel. Look at everybody looks different. Everybody's a different age, different country, does completely different art. Everybody here is an individual. None of us are part of collective. It's like herding cats. We're only here because we believe in in that type of freedom and individualism.
But would you also say like that medieval collectivism stands for a controlled economy versus the Renaissance, which was free entrepreneurial,
well, yes,
basically free market?
The Renaissance is the birth of the merchant class. Prior to the Renaissance, only the royalty and the clergy owned the money and assets, and so you had the rise of the merchant class, and in conjunction with the artists, and you know,
sound money
in a nutshell.
Sound money.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the new class that would be created in this, you know, Renaissance 2.0, if you will?
That's an interesting question. You know, like everybody, that's a really interesting question because, you know, we have this whole idea of global citizenry and then sovereign nations and the conflict between the two, you know?
Yeah.
And then you have Web3 citizens, and they're sort of beyond even physical global citizenship. You know, I mean, you sort of break down those barriers. Do you know what I'm saying? And then
a little bit.
You don't even have national boundaries for finance. So it's an interesting class that's going to emerge. I think that we have the potential to make sure something of individualism and meritocracy benefits the whole planet. We have that opportunity, but you have to also understand we could easily become like you know, every dystopian SF novel, sort of a world in which everything's regulated by AI in an authoritarian manner with social rating system, and everybody's like terrified if one misstep and you'll lose your social accounts, you'll lose your ability to sell your art. That's also that threat, in my opinion, coexists simultaneously with all these groovy Renaissance 2.0, you know, options. So we're literally straddling both right now.
I wonder, would most people in this room agree that individual sovereignty is like a very central ethos to this Web3 art movement?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, if you don't have freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of art. And this is what I found to be the most weird thing, because there were platforms that refused to work with me because simply I just said, I think freedom of speech is a good thing, when the kind of machine was turning on that whole thing. So, you know, you can no longer say such things, or then you're a right-wing extremist or whatever retarded thing that was. But all the artists went along with it. And I didn't understand how you don't see that freedom of speech is the same as your freedom of creativity, whatever it is that is coming out of you, that's so. I think artists should be the first bastion of those who will go and defend their freedom of expression. I mean, and that's the same thing.
Yeah, but hold on a second. Can we just take a moment before we give so much power to this cancel culture era? The 1950s was the most oppressive era in terms of cancel culture in the United States. Who was the number one most canceled figure of the 1950s? I'll tell you who. Elvis Presley. Everyone from the White House to the FBI to mainstream media was going after Elvis every chance they had to destroy him. What happened? He became the most beloved performer of the 20th century. Why? People love rebels. You can look at everything that's happening now, but history is always made in the future. The people who are rising up and being the rebels and getting the online metrics, I won't mention it, but I think you all know who I'm talking about, are the Elvis Presleys of this era.
People love to see rebels, not to be rebels, maybe.
Because they can't be rebels. They live vicariously through rebels, George. That's what it comes down to.
True.
Yeah.
My part, I'm sometimes afraid that this whole, Renaissance will become the same established system that we got a way, to come to crypto, because, I see kind of the same things happening. We didn't want the middleman, but the middleman again is here in different forms as an influencer or someone who dictates who is the best artist and who is not, which are the best trends, stuff like that. Aren't you afraid that it will become the same shit that? who's supposed to left and come here. Because sometimes I'm feeling it, and
I think that almost everything is very cyclical in that nature. I mean, Freak Jesus, I don't know how big your historical knowledge is of the punk movement, but I mean, even the punk movement went through this, right? They had like the initial punks, and then that kind of like degraded into something that the second wave of punks was like, no, we don't want to go back to that thought pattern. We want to maintain this philosophy and keep going in our direction. Do you think that that's true overall, given your understanding of the punk movement and all of that?
Yeah, I totally understand what you are saying, and I think it's also it's funny that you're saying that, because I really it's the punk movement. It's like what is happening with the crypto art. I think it's very similar, because when I went to this movement, I was like feeling that was something underground, and then you have like this huge hype of NFTs, because in beginning I think people didn't talk saying that was NFT art, they said crypto art, so and you have like this huge hype, I think the world you see the little kids with the cell phones, you see everything is now digital. I understand when I like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, I think when we see like graphic design, we see covers of magazines for marketing to sell products, but and some of the posters and all that things you see like they look like art, but people didn't see it like that. So I think when people start to get more engaged with the internet, like everyone is like on Facebook, on like spending lots of time on that, and it's like we have like these people that do that, do this everything. You follow the everything, and so I think the in some point the NFTs we create like a need for, and people like it was like, oh, you have this, and if you start to buy some NFTs, you are a cool guy, and I think that it's good for us, for us artists, but in some point you have like this the underground scene. It starts to go to mainstream, and sometimes it's like it lost its beauty, but I think it's like you said, you have like this punk, then it goes down, and we have like the new wave, and it's always like that. That's my point of view, I think now we are like floating a little bit, and some artists like me, sometimes we are struggling, and but I think that's it keeps going, and sometimes when we have this like ups and downs, we see people that were coming and then they go out, and I think the strongest they keep going. That's
as soon as you get like a little bit of money, then it's like, oh no, now I'm an artist, like I'm high and mighty, instead of being like the down and dirty punkish counterculture that we kind of started with. I almost wonder if some of that contributes to the odd aesthetic that we have, and why a lot of the people in Web3 do like collage art and things like that are kind of like aesthetically a little overwhelming, right? They're not just painting landscapes or figure art or anything like that. It's like, no, this is just a rock that's super pixelated, and it's because it's for us. It's not for you to hang on your wall in the restaurant and make it look nice. It's because we're doing something totally different than you are. We're trying to deviate from whatever this biodome of conformity that you have us stuck into, and then therefore all of this odd aesthetic that's not just cute landscapes and stuff. Does that vibe with the room at all?
Yeah. Actually, there's this amazing book from Ernst Gombrich. He's like a famous aesthetician, and he wrote the book The Return of the Primitive, where you see sort of an oscillation in history between refined art, which reaches a pinnacle, and then in reaction to the refining, there's like brute art, like primitivism, which then sort of says exactly like you say, we're different. They're trying to sort of distance themselves from the sort of refined, almost commercialized to extinction art. That, you know, some people also say when they see these, you know, beautiful women on commercials or something, that, you know, it's not even art anymore. You know, it has nothing to do with art. It's, you know, it's crass. It's actually ugly in a way.
I don't think it's a big blanket term. I mean, like, I'm still just painting images. I am one of those unfortunate suffering bastards still doing landscapes.
We love you for that. We love you for that.
Figure art. Fuck me, right?
That's not always so true. There's a lot of work in the crypto art space that isn't necessarily, you know, gestural or de-skilled or minimalist in that regards. There's work that's highly refined. So I'd say it's more like what I said earlier, that, I mean, if you kind of look at all the styles of, you know, modernism and postmodernism from the 20th century, there's many different approaches. But I think what's happening now, because of the post-internet world and the post-digital world, is there's a simultaneity. There's a type of simultaneity that we didn't have before when we were purely in the physical. So think of it as all of those styles are coexisting and happening simultaneously. So rather than being linear and going like, okay, we're having this phase or we're having that phase, and this will last 5 years and that'll last 10 years. And, you know, we're having it all simultaneously. Maybe it's more like that, but definitely within that diverse simultaneity, there's room for what you were speaking of. Art that is highly personalized and niche and has this sort of dedicated small community via the digital and the metaverse and the internet, and it exists independently of any physical phenomenon such as galleries and museums, etc. Yeah, in that regards, I agree. We definitely have that.
But we do.
But we're talking about microcultures, no? Like, we're talking about all sorts of things. You have my dumb suffering ass making paintings, yes? And then we also have what was it from the Mocha podcast? It was wonderful. It was Julian and Frenetic Void's project Sai Coco, which is just total, like, absolute madness, not appealing to anyone other than these two guys that are giggling to each other about creating essentially the ugliest alternate reality that is somehow incredibly cute all at once. Check this out when you can. It's on the Mocha podcast from December something or other, and it was wonderful. But like, you have that, you have you know, you have like Grand Yon, urban landscapes, you have everybody doing everything, right? And then the question is, we're so tempted to throw a huge fucking blanket over everything, right? And I think you're right, Marjan, is like, you don't know a movement until it's well past due. But like, I wonder if the thing that me and my fiance talk about, concept called the Sekhmet theory, which is not a real theory, but it's been in the zeitgeist long enough that it should be. It's this idea that we go through cultural shifts, and it's more about attitudes rather than one blanket medium or subject matter, right? It was made popular by Grant Morrison in his book The Invisibles, which is super fucking cool. But the whole idea being that the guy that wrote about this theme is discredited himself, but I think it has some bearing of, like, every 10 years we go through some sort of, where we go from the attitudes that go from I'm okay, you're okay, I'm not okay, but you're okay, I'm not okay, you're not okay, etc. And so the shifts between that. So I'm like, that's the only thing that I'm frankly interested in. I don't think you can have a blanket movement in something so chaotic as this. It's a fucking free-for-all at this point. Like, there is no dominant thing.
But there is one thing that I do find very particular and strange, and it refers to something that Marian started saying, is that we have this potential of becoming this sort of very dystopian society that AI controls everything and whatever. And if you look at, for example, the kind of fascist movement or the communist movement and those very oppressive kind of control-centered systems, that we have all of the markers of those now in the woke movement, and in the way that governments and ideologies are merging together that seem to be something that is coming out of, for the most part, from the World Economic Forum. And there's a strange silence in the art world about anything that is on the woke. It's one of the most polarizing things that I've lived through, is to kind of see the rise of the woke, and there's nearly no voices in the art world that is saying anything but kowtowing totally to this movement. And at this moment in time, as it's doing that, we are coming together with all of those different kinds of technologies that might have humanity in a death grip, unlike it's been ever before. And the population seems to be just quickly and kind of slowly and quietly succumbing into this sort of vortex. So even though in one way it's a free-for-all, but those systems that are kind of now considered the mainstream, or the government funded, or the respectable, or those kinds of things, they are very much going into this totalitarian way. And this is what was exciting about crypto art to begin with. And my apologies if sometimes I've even been a little upset about this and kind of typed away in a nearly autistic manner about this, and kind of probably not coming across great. But I think it's just very strange that we have this plethora opening now, like I said about crypto art, what it took on, and then now everyone's free to do whatever. But then simultaneously we have this movement saying that, cultural appropriation is a bad thing, and all these segmentations, and art is nothing but cultural appropriation. That's what it's always been at its very core, is being inspired by each other and other cultures and clothing and bringing it all together. And now we finally can do that, and simultaneously everyone is walking on eggshells. Because, and this was personally very strange to me, because I got to travel a lot ever since I was a kid. I was fortunate that way. And then I got to see all of these different things, and I definitely resonated with inclusion and kind of everyone together, and for their ability, and this true meritocracy, and this coming together. And then all of a sudden I come into the art world and start to more and more see that some people just saw me as a straight white man. And I went, this is the weirdest thing of all time. Like, all of the things that you say that you're about, you're now saying I'm excluded because of just the most superficial things about me. And I thought that, hold on a minute, this is the weirdest thing ever. And all of a sudden, no one is saying anything about this. No one in the art world. Everyone is like, zip, nada. And then people say, oh, we're free. And I go, no, this is more like, East Germany, where we are already.
It's kind of self-censoring ourselves.
But, the art world is the enforcer of this hegemony. You have to understand something. It's the intellectual enforcement of the hegemony that you speak of. But, I mean, come on, the modernists were just as radical. And, for Picasso to do a brothel house with African masks, in that style, Demoiselle d'Avignon, was heretical on every level imaginable. Nude descending the staircase, Duchamp at the Armory show well over 100 years ago didn't look anything like the portraits and landscapes that the darlings of the digital art, the darlings of the art salons were doing. Every memorable moment in art history is the rebels to a large extent, and they ran counter to the hegemony. And, something that Beeple tweeted recently that I think is really important. And I don't think Beeple's given as much credit as he should, because he tweets something. But something that he said was that, the art world ignores digital art, but it's the visual vocabulary of our world. And he's absolutely right. Take a moment to consider how much of everything you see, from the internet to feature films to special effects to video games, everything is the aesthetic of digital art, yet so much of what is celebrated and dealt with as contemporary art is devoid of that aesthetic. And so it is kind of like, modernism versus the landscapes and the portraits right now. Yes, the bulk of what's selling and the bulk of what is institutionally celebrated is the equivalent of the landscapes and portraits. But what is really happening in a non-geolocated way is a lot of the digital art and crypto art and the exciting developments in the NFT space.
Coburn, I wanted to ask you. wanted to ask you something because your Mocha is like really successful and really, really present. How do you sort of manage how do you manage the problem of the middleman? Like, how do you keep it open and sort of inclusive for everybody?
Well, I would challenge that we are successful. We fight, I think, like many people, for our lives here every day. This is by no means kind of guaranteed. What we are, I think, like so many here, is different. How do you fight off the middleman? Well, behind every great historical treasure in these museums generally is a terrible crime. So, what we have done is really begin to say that the tools for you as a collector, as an artist, as whatever, is to be the museum. You can be the museum in this age. You can have a room, you can put art on the wall, you can be a curator. There is no limit to the definition of what you are, and we offer all of that for free. So, what does it mean suddenly when the art world is reinterpreted from the ground up, when the people decide who are kind of the artists of the people, who are their champions, who has the voice, instead of the idea that culture is pushed down through a systematized, institutional way. And this is by no means accepted. And as we begin to look at what happened, there was a ton of incredible art creation, and there was very, very little curation or really care for the research of what was happening. And I do expect over time that history will catch up to what has happened. It's just interesting that this market, in true crypto art fashion, led with value and money first.
And do you also think, in that sense, that, for example, the fact that it's digital, so you can have like infinite rooms in a museum, right? There's no limit to the number of rooms that you could have in a virtual museum. But with the scarcity, you can put like scarce items within each of those infinite rooms, right? So that nobody has to be excluded in that sense.
I mean, we don't have to own it. They can own it. They can bring it into the room. They can pull it out at any time. And I think where a lot of people have been going, what is going to matter is what humans do with it. Yeah. In an age when there are infinite bots online, when there is artificial intelligence, when these entities are collectors and curators as well, what are humans doing? What do humans care about? And how do we, immutably have a voice in the digital?
Agree. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I think this is a sort of a great time to move on to where I'd like to take it next, and just talk about the culture of art collecting. On many levels, this digital era seems to have transformed the interaction between artists, their artworks, and their audience. That's what we're kind of talking about now. We've got digital platforms that are apparently enabling these deeper connections, this deeper sense of community than ever before, and that the rise of NFTs has revolutionized art ownership, how you purchase it, how you store it, and sort of aligning the value of digital art with traditional forms of art and creating a more inclusive, connected world. So I'd like us to chat about what impact you guys think that digital art and digital platforms have on this art appreciation, the culture of collecting, and sort of taking away the idea that there are these gatekeepers, these middlemen, and these people controlling what we see. Because historically, we kind of had very few ways to look at art, generally on a canvas. And we had very few ways to have access to that, to go to an art gallery. Whereas now everybody's got screens in their hands and artists are putting art on screen. So it's kind of opening up something that we haven't seen before. So yeah, I'd like to hear from you guys. What do your thoughts on how this is going to move forward and how it is now?
since I'm going to bring up Andy Warhol, who predicted it in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes, and the era of internet influencers made that happen. So maybe now we can say in the future everyone will be an art collector, because it's there's an aspect of social media and making your lives public that creates a space for collecting art. And you look at the prices on pesos, they're highly affordable. I mean, who's going to say I can't afford $2 for an art piece? So there's an awful lot that's happening.
Well, the answer to that is actually a lot of people.
I know, I agree. But I'm saying there is a level, there is an entry point that allows for anyone to collect art. So,
and younger people. I mean, you're saying a lot of younger people who would kind of see these things, not even possibly even go into a gallery or a museum, and it's right in their hands now. This is going to change, I think, the entire culture of what the art buying experience is. And
and you bring up a really good point. Something that I'm observing is, like, I'm doing a lot of sculptures right now and this is mostly for young collectors. They want sculptures in my style. They say, we want sculptures that look like your figures. And if you've seen my work, you should know two things. One, that it's a lot of work to get a closed manifold, printable closed manifold out of my figures, number one, as I suffer through, delivering closed manifolds for 3D printing from my work. And the second thing is that they don't look anything like older styles of art. So the point you bring up is there is a young collector sort of group that I have come across and I've sold art to and deal with, that's interested in aesthetics that look like our moment. So there is such a thing as a new aesthetic for our moment. It's digital, it's internet informed or post-internet, and people want that in their homes. That is actually happening in my experience, but it's something I deal with now.
There's one thing that I could bring up, maybe from because there's twofold. There's a big problem that is not to do with this community, nor even it's so much wider. So first I'll tell the problem, and then I'll tell what I think is the solution. And because I came across this machine gun intellect cultural critic called Camille Paglia earlier on her YouTube lectures, and I love her to bits. She's this New York take no shit lady, and just like she just lets go. And she's a very interesting character because she's lesbian. She identified as transgender already in the 80s. She was in the first wave of feminism, and she got cast out because she was in man-hating. She has all the kind of, I would say, the social credit points of
she
today.
Also pioneered in the Dharma studies as a PhD field, by the way.
Well, she has this one particular lecture where that's called "Art Belongs to Everyone," and she goes through the Renaissance again, and she goes how this whole opening up, like Marianne so brilliantly said. Well, like what happened back then. And she says that it's a big failure of education where we are now, that a lot of the universities became boutique style. They became buffets of you can select whatever it is that you want to start learning, and all the great masters were forgotten, and all of a sudden we started reading the old masters, even though, just in terms of power structure and so forth. And we didn't really, from our public education globally in the West, we lost the whole language of art. So we don't really have it. Why is this echoing so much? Do you also hear the echo, or is it just me?
Only you.
Only me.
Ooh, who's in trouble? Who left their mic on?
Okay,
I think it was mine, actually, but go ahead, Pace. I didn't want to interrupt your point, so if I plug mine up, then it should go away, hopefully.
Oh, sure. Okay, great. Yeah, it's just messing my head. So anyway, she said that we've lost the language of art, and then movies came along, because it was in the beginning of movies, no, not the beginning, but even up until recently, it was like great paintings kind of directed scenes, in directors were inspired by them and put them into the movies, and fine art kind of guided popular culture, whereas then it now kind of got reversed into this whole thing of where we have a lot of art, and you see this especially in Dubai, you see a lot of dollar signs and Louis Vuitton bags and Scrooge McDuck and whatever, and that's what people recognize because it's in our lexicon. It's the pop culture now influencing a lot of the art that people buy, because we don't have the education to know what the language of art is in general. So that's a big problem. But I think now what's happening, especially with Web3, and what I tried to do with this Superworld collaboration that we did, is that I'm very inspired by this one particular Egyptian temple called the Luxor Temple. And it's built into the image of man, and it tells the whole story of how a pharaoh goes from birth to transcendence, and how the whole of the society around that temple is then kept in order if the pharaoh lives well according to the rules. And I thought it's a magnificent, massive structure, and it's of course of ruin now, but it's still, I went there physically, and it's just something that blows your mind when you know the whole story of it. And then I thought, okay, well, this is the scene and setting where I would like for my art to be seen in, because this is the kind of message that it's trying to convey and what it's trying to portray as a whole mood. So if with Superworld, we could construct this in virtual reality and then make it my personal art gallery where I can embed videos that say what it is about. I can sort of showcase both the stills images as well as the motion images, and then hopefully in the future, for the future galleries, I would also have an AI curator present there, that 24/7 anyone comes there, they will hear the context of the location where they are, what is actually possible now, and I can send this to anyone with a click of a button who has internet access across the globe. So this problem of not, in general, us having the lexicon of art in a similar kind of way, we can also now bring the lexicon of art with these technological solutions and our innovation and our any contribution that we have back to the general discussion in such a way that it starts to compete with movies, it starts to compete with computer games. Because there is a hunger that people are wanting to rediscover meaning for their lives, something beyond their hedonistic lifestyles and this kind of a thing. So there's an emergence of spirituality, there's an emergence of technology, and there's an emergence of all of this creativity coming together all at once. And that is a super positive thing. But we have been in a bit of a slump, and we're trying to cope, trying to say, oh, we're still good, we're this and that, and let's push through it. But I think now we finally have the technological solutions and the networks through which we can help each other understand our mutual languages of art much better again.
Besa, do you want to hear True Agony? Like True Agony? True Agony is losing literally a mocha room that's built to that tune to René.
Sorry about that, bro.
Still
Must suck.
To this day. It's all marble pillars, checkerboard pattern floors. It looks like a perfect Hermetic temple, and it was just like, next time, buddy, and next time never came. But I agree with you. I was actually thinking about this over the past couple of days, because now we're getting to a point in AI where you can actually take you can feed it imagery, and there is AI that can create panorama, like worlds that you can sit in, you can stand in, and the idea of like feeding one's artwork into that to create a world. And then I love magic and mysticism. There's nothing I love more than a good temple. So like I go in, and I would love to be able to potentially put on 3D glasses, maybe not get my metaverse goggles or whatever dystopian thing it is, and sit down in my temple and walk around, or potentially have it generate things from any level of ancient, like text or book, and then put it into a context that I can walk through and play in, is like my absolute ideal. But as far as collecting things, and showing things off, is like the fact that we can do that and we have those spaces is beautiful. And the fact that I'm shocked that I've been able to collect so much through crypto art, mostly through 01, but also through like the various different price points of other artists and artists that I enjoy and that I have a very personal relationship, is really amazing. Again, it's just like this personal relationship that you can have with the people that actually create the art as an artist, as a collector, I think is what pushes this whole place forward. right? Like it's a bit like the mystique of the artist and the collector is slowly taking a backseat to just being very right, and then being able to show off, and celebrate your friend's work and accomplishments that you happen to resonate with is fucking amazing. Like it's absolutely incredible to be like, yeah, my friend did that. Like my friend put heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears into that, and I can show it out. I have a piece of that. I have a piece of that intimate experience that they made that I can now look at my leisure, right? That's kind of amazing.
The feedback is very direct, right, between your audience and yourself, and also between artists, right? That's something new, that artists can really sort of reinforce each other and develop each other's skills and aesthetics.
We've been doing that though. We've been doing that since forever. It's all Marco Polo. We're all responding to each other, right? Like, Colburn, right? You were saying it earlier. Is like this idea of what is great about the space is being able to see people respond to like different moments, different people, different art, different artists, different collectors buying something for $8 million, and then just like, what do you do with that emotion? And I love seeing the artists that are brave enough to go like, if it pisses them off, to go and make something of it, right? Is really cool. Or if they like something, to make something of it, right? Even if it's just a color and a palette from another artist. It's really interesting to watch over the course of 3 years how artists change as they're exposed to one another. It's really raw, and it's never been more visible than in this moment. That is the magic of it, right? Is like the embracing of different techniques, subject matter, technology. Like that's a crazy thing to be able to see in real time.
Yeah, but that's sort of what I mean. Sort of the floodgates have opened, and everybody is able to join and mingle. Right, it's sort of like a giant melting pot, basically.
Like a mid-zen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that goes back to George's point about the middleman. I think that's where it's going to dissolve, because those boundaries have now been broken down. Now we have this deep connection happening between artists and their collectors. Not only sort of these one-on-one experiences that maybe would traditionally have happened or sort of in small groups, but really on a massive global level with hundreds of different types of artists, just like this room today, so many different types of people all being able to come together. And this is going to take us even one tiny step further, even just this conversation today. So yeah, I think for me that is, I'm hugely passionate about breaking down that middleman philosophy where you kind of stuck and confined in a room, just in terms of traditional art and how it's sold, how we've been walking down the street and seeing it. There are very few art magazines, there are very few galleries compared to what you can do now. You can whip up a cyber gallery and there's something out there for everybody. There's a taste for everything. And I don't think that's been traditionally allowed, or easily accessible.
Yeah.
It hasn't been the dominant narrative, I don't think. I think the mystique is there on purpose, or has been there on purpose. And not to say that there isn't mystique and like power players within the tastemakers or whatever the fuck in the community, but like that has been brought down on purpose. I don't think people want it to be up to begin with. And the only reason I say that is because it ties back into, yes, we're meeting right here digitally, right? But there's also 5, 6, 7 events where people meet at any given time. And where I always hear, whether it's Miami or New York or Lisbon or Paris, it's like, what was everyone's favorite time is when you get to sit next to Die with the Most Likes and Alien Queen at a smoky, disgusting, awful, grimy, beer-stained bar and hang out and shoot the shit and then clink, clink. And then that was the highlight of the whole trip. It wasn't going to the dance party or like going into a back room. It was just having a normal human experience. And that seems to be, I know this is a bit off base, but that seems to be the glue that holds together everything from like sales, relationships, shows, is like constant digital interaction with each other, sure. And then afterwards meeting all of you guys in person is what is both incredibly special, right, for the obvious reasons, and then also the fact that it furthers everything along, the career, the space, the underculture. It's kind of amazing.
I think it's
Actually,
because, behind everything, it's always the people behind the tokens, behind the art, behind all this. And my first experience at Lisbon, because I'm a person who is a little bit of an introvert and I don't go out much, so it was a huge step for me to go to Lisbon. But I had this experience that I loved everyone, and I felt that everyone loved me too. And I think it was because there is a trust that we created between us, sort of like coins and tokens, but we are the ones that are behind everything. Our personality, our opinions, and this space kind of smooths things that we have because we are strangers in a way, and we have this beautiful experience, like you said.
Yeah, actually, I at the last minute, at the end of NFT NYC last year, I decided to do a party. It was like, literally, totally like spontaneous. And Rob Ness and Stella Bell and Empress Trash came over, and we had so much fun. I mean, you couldn't separate us. So I'll probably do that again this year. So if you're in New York City, any of you, for NFT NYC, definitely DM me because I want to invite you.
Awesome. Love that.
Fantastic.
So can I say something? So in formal, we are talking about the interaction with the collector. So I have like this nice thing that happens with a collector. So in the beginning, when I start to do art, I start to do college in Clean Chat, and in 2021, I met a collector. And I think it was in April, he bought me a lot of stuff. And in June, I think, he sent me a DM with some artist, a drawing, a painting. And he asked me, did you already started to draw something in your iPad? Yeah, and I told him, oh, I don't have an iPad. So yeah, maybe you could try, because he liked me, my work. And so I was like thinking, okay, I really love to draw. So I bought the iPad, and then I start to draw, in painting, and I changed my style, So it was like from that collector, and the amazing thing was that it was like a change on me, and it comes from the collector that I think he saw that on me. I don't know. But I changed my style, and I start to do what I really love it, and that's a great story between an artist and a collector. And maybe if he didn't send me that DM, I could still doing the old stuff, and I was happy. But now I'm more happy that I'm doing what I really like, So yeah, it was really cool.
So what is still holding back the masses? Is it sort of the copy-paste idea that they have of NFTs and crypto art?
It's just that nobody has ever been given any digital property rights.
Good point. Good point. So they have to have a taste of it. So how do you get them across
It's convenience, it's usability, it's interface, it's how to make it as dumb and simple as possible. We haven't won. We think maybe we're winning because we're selling stuff at the high end, but we haven't won until all digital content is authenticated online, and that doesn't come about until there is an AI revolution, until we have no idea the difference between what is human produced content and what is artificially created content.
Because that adoption through sort of usability and ease of use also has the risk of reintroducing the middleman, right? via the back door.
I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with having middlemen. I think they're to a degree absolutely necessary. Like, for example, if there's a industrialist or someone who doesn't really have that much of a background in art, and then you start to have a conversation with the artist, you immediately are in a circle where you're trying to establish trust in a circle where you don't know whether that can happen or not. So if you have a gallerist with a good reputation who is in between that, or someone else who that industrialist trusts, and then it's done the introduction in a good way and whatever, then probably tenfold the amount of deals can happen than just well, this is really not my field, I think I just better step back because I just don't know, I'll do my research, and then nothing ever happens and nothing goes forward. So I think you want to have the machine as efficient as possible, but I don't think you want to just cut everyone who's an expert of this, or out of the goodness of their heart helping artists or bringing things together or whatever. I think everyone needs to make money from it, and if everyone makes money, all of us make much more money in the process of it. I just think that we ended up in a system that was very exclusive for a while, and then some people took very, very fat percentages that they didn't really deserve because of simply some connections or whatever, and then that now got blown apart. But I think it will come back together in a more compact way, that we still realize that we do need many, many extra people in this whole sphere of us so that it functions properly. I think it's an amalgam of,
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I think when we speak about this sort of middleman, I think because no artist or no platform or no currency can exist in an isolation. We are all here together, and I think a big part of what we're doing is to work together, to come together, and create roles that are more equitable. Because if you I've worked for a very long time in the music industry, and when we talk about middlemen, we're talking about, artists who are creating music and who are getting, 10,000 streams gives you $42. And that's if you're not with a record label. If you're with a record label, they're going to take another 90% off that before you get paid. So there's middlemen, and then there's middlemen. And I think part of this whole journey that we're all on in this revolution, for want of a better word, is to redefine what is a middleman. And maybe it's not a middleman, maybe it's a partner man. Somebody who can help you on your journey. I spend a lot of my time working with artists because a lot of them come to me and say, listen, I don't want to go on the internet, and I don't want my face to be seen, and but I'd like to give you the art, and I'd like you to help me take that forward in this, in this digital age. And I think slowly they'll learn to become more involved, but I think you have to have people with integrity and who believe in what's going on, rather than those traditional people who were just taking the cream without ever refilling the milk.
But I also think, if you create a trustless sound base, then you can build or rebuild trust. Well, if you have like a system that's based on trust, you basically sow trustlessness. Like people stop trusting each other in a system that is sort of based on trust.
Yeah, that was the idea from the start, I think. And when I said about middlemen, I meant people that are getting percentages from sales. I mean, it's simple, not someone who is doing it from the goodness of their heart, like Vesa said. I mean, that's something totally different. But I feel like at the beginning we didn't need so many middlemen. I mean, you have the platform, took a percentage because it gave you a service. That's. But now, if you need a gallerist, and you need an influencer, and you need another influencer, and you need another, things are getting complicated.
I know we're almost out of time, but if we could use this as an opportunity to ask each other questions, I just wanted to quickly ask Colborne. Colborne has taught me so much. He was the first person who made me aware of the relationship between market cap for a particular cryptocurrency and longevity. So he made me actually think about the market cap as a factor in artistic longevity. I've never thought about that before. And it's for that reason that I'd like to take this opportunity today. I just saw there's a whole thing going on Twitter debating about ordinals. So just before we leave, I wanted to hear what Colborne's thoughts were about ordinals.
You want to know my
damn.
You want to know my real thoughts on ordinals?
You know it's going to be good.
Yeah, look, it's actually pretty simple. The art movement that was created on Ethereum was from the artists. It was very organic, right? What we see happen across chains is, of course, when something is successful, it gets copied. But the people that are copying it generally are not the artists themselves. It's the capitalists and the technologists, right? And at the heart of this movement is that. So, I think it is great. I think artists should be everywhere. I think they should be across chains. The art that speaks to me on Bitcoin is the art that is on Counterparty, right? I think a lot of people saw an opportunity to put art on ordinals inscriptions, and they saw it less as an artistic movement and more of a value creation event. And that is less exciting to me.
I think with ordinals, if I may, because I was sort of involved in the early kind of, as it sort of was, when the protocol was launched by Casey Rodemore and artists started putting art on. And initially it was just terrible. I mean, there was just, I think the first million ordinals, I was starting to get anxiety going, like, why are they putting these things onto ordinals, And it felt like a huge just cash grab. It was like, this is something new. Let's put something out there just to have a picture on there. And, but more recently, there's been an incredible influx of artists. There's a platform that is pretty much exclusively focused on art. They allow people, because obviously it's cost prohibitive for a lot of people. The fees are really high. I think to create an ordinal, it's sort of between $500, sometimes $1,000, sometimes more. So it's really tough to put art out there. So they're kind of creating very interesting things. There's a thing called prints, and you can create your parent ordinal, which you retain as the artist, and then you can sell the prints of them. They sold relatively inexpensively, and when they originally launched the marketplace, there was no secondary market because they wanted to introduce the idea of collecting art. And it was an incredible way. We just saw, people bought them. They bought them knowing that they couldn't sell them. And for me, that was really looking at how people are appreciating art and that it's not just a pump and dump situation, So there are some interesting things going on with ordinals at the moment. I must say, I'm very fascinated with it.
I kind of think that there was, the very first service that I started using was Verisart in 2017, and I started authenticating some of the reproductive prints that I had done and painted on top of or signed or whatever, and I put them on Verisart, and they got recorded on the BTC chain already back then. And I always kind of wondered how it is that people define NFTs at the moment, because it's meant to be a certificate of authenticity. It's the hash that is on the blockchain and it points to something. And that's already something that we started doing for those things back then. And it was already on BTC. And then there's, like Colborne said, there's Counterparty and all those kinds of things. So it just seemed like, very artificial, this whole thing. And then I saw what was being minted, and for the most part, it was, again, just All right. So, but that's very interesting, Kitty, what you said about that. I'd love to check out that platform, at least what they're doing with it, because I do think that authenticating on the Bitcoin chain might have the most longevity out of all of these, because with NFTs we still do have that big problem, is that whether you're going to go to a page 404 not found type situation. So the technological solutions of having large files authenticated on the blockchain with links that don't get broken is very, very interesting. But with this kind of thing, it seemed very artificial.
Yeah, with I mean, as you know, it goes to traditionally when you create an NFT, it's stored on the IPFS, right? And it is in fact not completely immutable. It can be altered in some way. That the opening still exists for that. Where when you inscribe something onto Bitcoin, you can never burn it. You can never change it. You cannot make a mistake, because that will live forever inscribed directly. It absolutely is absorbed into the sat. So, and then each individual sat, it gets quite intricate. It's very interesting to explore, because the sats have different values. They're broken down into a number of different values. So you can find vintage sats, you know, and it's an interesting journey for artists to explore. So if anyone does want any further information about it after this conversation, then hit me up.
I was going to say,
I definitely do.
Okay, one other question, since we're on the subject. What are everybody's thoughts on exchange art and soul?
It's just another. Both of these seem to. It's another coin. It's another platform. It's another set of friends to make. And the question is, does our ambition outstrip our sense of our sense of let me just work on this chain and figure this out and do all these things that I just did for another whole other system, right? Which I think it's not the core problem with crypto art, because it's been solved many times, right? But it's this, you have these little enclaves that you have to break into, and we don't realize that we're in an enclave. We're in a community that one must break into, and that's a time sensitive thing for each person, right? It usually takes about 3 weeks. So the question is, back to I guess I hate to come back to the original question. I don't hate it, actually. I'm totally down with it. The original question is, what is keeping people out of the party is the same thing that keeps everybody else out of the party, which at any party is the exclusivity runs against us in a way, even though it doesn't. It's just it's this thing of what do you have to do? I got to learn how to make a wallet. Now I got to learn how to keep that wallet secure. And now I got to get this coin. Now I got to do this thing. And then when I transfer this out, I got to use this website or that website. And it's you give people more than 1 or 2 steps, usually their eyes start to glaze over, myself included. So it's okay, it's another system to learn. And when the system is learned, it's like breathing. But yeah, I think what it is, as far as the chains go, I say do them all, because why the fuck not? What, there's no counter, and there's no negative to it, right? But it's as far as the getting more people into the pool, I wonder if it matters. More. I'm always going to be saying more shows, cash option, a mix of physical and digital objects to show off all these things that will make a real experience that I actually want to go to. And not necessarily say a Tezpol as it stands, although the new Tezpols that I've seen seem really cool. I just feel like it's still going to be, no matter what, a hook or by hook and by crook situation of getting into a community, making friends, and then you're selling to your friends. That's constantly that your friends want to collect your art. They know what you're into, they know your story, they know what you're trying to achieve, or they have some semblance of an idea, or even better, it just resonates with them in some inexpressible way. And yeah, the chain is not going to matter. The chain is not going to matter. The show is not going to matter. It's still on each of us to do that job. So I don't know.
How do you guys feel about Solana? Have you joined some of the art platforms there, and has that felt organic, the growth of that and kind of transformations?
I haven't, but I'll just say to that, the greatest lie that the crypto artists were ever sold was a holdover from the contemporary art world in that they needed to manage their scarcity, right? These are digital objects that need to be abundant, that we need to spread abundantly. So the fact of the matter is that Ethereum is not accessible, inclusive, diverse, or whatever. It is for a specific audience. So Solana, as that next chain down, is fulfilling more of that promise. You continue to go down, but we need hundreds of thousands of transactions happening every second. We need authentication on this level. And I think just as, 90s pop stars made it through distribution of CDs, so will the visual artists of the future make it through having their art in millions of wallets around the world. So they will be the Murakamis, they will be the people whose names, they will be the cause, they will be the people whose names are known. And that is, if you want to be a pop artist, you need to solve how the blockchain can authenticate and distribute for you. And I think that is probably where Solana is winning.
And you would have a preference for Solana over Tezos?
I mean, Tezos is dead, right? I chose to build on Avalanche. Avalanche is much more interesting to me because it's EVM compatible, and those assets can travel from Avalanche back to Ethereum because they have the same coding language. I've never been on Solana. I have no desire to be on Solana. But, I am interested in an EVM future, and your options for EVM are Avalanche as the layer 1, or you could look at the layer 2s, which are Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, and Base.
I think we need to have a whole separate, Bitcoin Live needs to do a whole separate show on this. The pros.
I think so too. Yeah. we'll find some experts out there. I'm sure. I'm sure there are.
Between GoodKitty and Colburn, I think you can get a good lineup.
Yeah, I also know some AVEX, big AVEX fans. So yeah, definitely. It would be an interesting discussion between different communities.
That's why I said I always learn so much from Colburn in that regards, because there are things I just don't think about. And because that's not how my mind works as an artist, but you need people to point these things out.
Yeah. Can I just bring I've said this maybe a couple of times before, but not in the present company altogether. And I keep putting this out as a puzzle that I really want authentically the answer to, because, and this brings it back to as a bookending kind of to this Renaissance thinking. And one thing that I understood about the Renaissance, not that I know it super well or whatever, but it's that when the Medicis came to provenance, they had a new monetary innovation, and the digital, essentially Italy was in scatters. It wasn't a unified place at all. But through this monetary innovation, the Medici family started funding the best of the arts, the best of the sciences, and they started building the whole of the culture that now still centuries after we traveled to Italy to marvel at the peak of, we can't understand how some of that stuff was made. And what I saw at the beginning of crypto art was this sort of celebration of fine art and celebration of the collectibles and this kind of thing. But now I do see a lot of the biggest selling art, let's say Beeple or something like that. And I totally cool, super funny pop art and his commentary, and he does it live and it's exciting or whatever. But I wouldn't say that it kind of competes with the statue of Pieta in its substance and delivery and what it's trying to kind of showcase about what is the best of humanity in this kind of way. So what I'm saying is that I think the decentralized Bitcoin family is the Medici family, but it's very good at critiquing what is wrong with society. It'll tell you all what's wrong about fiat money. It'll tell you all about what's wrong with the universities or things or whatever is going wrong in its opinion. But I'm not sure if our decentralized Medici family has yet assumed its responsibility as the funder of the best of our culture and fixing those systems that it says that are broken. That's the one thing that I haven't really seen, because whether I'm successful at it or not, or whether anyone thinks that I'm doing it or not, I personally believe that I'm trying to craft what is the best, what is the peak of something, and the kind of spearhead of it, and that consciousness I don't yet see in being supported, at least for me personally, but for some other artists as well, who are trying to kind of get at to that niche of what would be then remembered or crafted that is the most amazing. And I might be totally wrong and in my own bubble with this kind of thing, but I'm trying to kind of see how there would be communities built where the best of the scientists and the best of the artists and the all whatever with these skill sets would come together under some community where these things are built that essentially will be the things that are remembered from our time. And for now, what it seems that there's a big risk, because we don't have this lexicon for art and most of us don't understand science in this kind of way. The NFTs have been taken over by this marketing thing, is that there are probably many marketing agencies pretending to be artists or brands or something like that, and they know absolutely how to use the hot words and things like that and how to make things look cool and sexy, and it's essentially a kind of pyramid scheme for them to take the money out. And that's kind of how many people outside of our bubble are perceiving NFTs, that it's pretty much just a giant rug pull. So I think that is one thing that is very much prohibiting for this space for being also adopted, as well as all the convenience and all the other things and getting it all to those wallets across the board. But I don't know. I'm probably worse at community building. I'm really not that good at it. I'm just focused so badly on how I can do something that I would think is worthy of presenting. But that's the one thing that I'm missing from this whole thing. I haven't found the community yet where I fit into that, which is that very peak of, I suppose, excellence. And whether I'm there or not is anyone else's thing. But I'm at least trying that.
Well, I think, there's an awful lot of work that our institutions celebrate that isn't the highest expression of our culture by any stretch of the imagination. Not everything is the Pieta, but I do agree that the Renaissance with a capital R, and keep in mind, there were artists who weren't reading Plotinus the way, let's say, Michelangelo was. There were artists during the Renaissance who were celebrated who weren't that concerned with Greek philosophy or things of that kind. So there was a high and a low even within the Renaissance. You had the artists who were just doing a commission, and they didn't really care about the subject matter, nor were they that well researched as, they say, someone like Michelangelo. So there's always that, you're always going to get that mix, and within that mix, yes, you'll have the highest expression of culture, but you will also have a variety of different artistic expressions. But
what would you say? What would you say is the highest expression of our culture now? Who is that artist, and what is it saying?
Me, baby.
Well, look,
me.
when my first Genesis minted piece was Taking the Knee, and that was like a very serious fine arts piece. And the second one, Capital, which was transition of the a lot of my earlier pieces were written about and discussed and exhibited even in museums, precisely because they had this substantial dialogue. And I haven't done a lot of generatives. The only generative I did was the NFT memorial of the Berlin Wall. And that was a very serious art project I did. And, it raised a lot of funds. It was a philanthropic thing. So I think I take that approach. And, a lot of times I don't just generate a quick, fast, dirty animation to make money. And my art hacks speak for themselves. Most of them tackle socio-political, cultural, and philosophical issues. So I sort of work with that. I'm not going to say I'm the highest expression of the culture, but I aim for that. And it's evident in every piece. Let me finish speaking, but we're not going to really know that right now. It's later that people figure it out. When you're in the midst of it, nobody knows. There are a lot of things that are going to be hugely popular right now that won't have any value 5 years from now. Not even.
Yeah, but there is also the money behind. I mean, when people see something that gets a very high price, they consider it that this is the high end. I mean, I understand what Vesa wants to say, that where are the masterpieces? If the highest value NFT is a CryptoPunk, where are the masterpieces?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's
maybe this is another time. This is another
it's a different, but I don't think we can really know when we're going through it. It's very
but we can discuss it at the present. For now.
I feel that that's akin to saying that when an archer shoots an arrow, he cannot know the location of his target while he is aiming. I mean, we have to be able to have an ideal to target. And Vesa, correct me if I'm totally off base right now, but you're asking, like, what is the highest expression of art in that? What is our ideal as a culture right now inside of Web3? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, very much. And I would exclude us present company as artists, because I don't think any of us are considered. I mean, I'm a pretty a peculiarity, because most people, even in the crypto art, don't know that I'm even a crypto artist, and especially the NFTs, I'm probably a nobody to a large majority. But I'm just simply thinking that who now is considered to have the peak expression from multiple layers of let's say it's academic, it's expressive, it's advanced and evolved. It's like, who's bringing all of those things together, let's say in a similar way as we would have considered in the Renaissance Da Vinci would have done. And I don't think we have that kind of a thing. We have some artists who are in their peak, who've made a lot of money and they've done lots of evolution or whatever, but I don't think it compares yet to what the potential is here, nor what it should be. And I agree with you, Marianne, in that kind of a way that, we need the longer lens, but I don't see it yet.
Hold on. I disagree. I employ a lot of philosophical underpinnings, art historic precedents. I employ a lot of those different frameworks and lenses in what I do. And I don't necessarily agree that I'm approaching this as, I'm just delivering for eyeballs to make a quick buck. And I don't think anyone can say that about my art.
I don't think anyone was implying that.
No, I'm not going to claim I'm the highest expression of the culture, like I said, but I aim for it. And I feel like a lot of other artists do too. Within this space, there are artists that do that. Which one of us will be whatever down the line, I have no idea.
Yeah, I take your point much better than I did earlier. So we're kind of on the same page as, like, we don't know who that specific person is who history will look back on and say, this is the person that did it. But we're all aiming for that highest expression. My thought was, what is it we're actually aiming at? What is the highest expression? And we all kind of seem to talk about that as if we know what the answer is, right? Because we're all aiming at our own highest expression. But what is that commonly, or what's the thread that we all kind of agree on, that we're, like, as a culture, we're heading this direction? That's such a huge question to wrap my head around. I wouldn't even know how to begin to fully describe what the ideal is. That's a question of mythological proportions in a literal sense.
But I think also it's a dangerous question, because as soon as you answer it, it becomes a consensus, and it kills the goose that lays the golden eggs, right? It's basically us searching for that expression on an individual level based on, what we encounter, that we give expression to it as individuals, right? As soon as you sort of give an answer to what it supposedly is, you create a new hierarchy, which will decide what is and what isn't art.
I was somewhere in that camp trying to put the words to the idea that it is no longer about the individual. It's about, like, this collective action of everybody suddenly having this information network in which we can, like, have true meritocracy based on, like, equal access to information, digital tools. The reason I think Rafik Anadol is so praised is because he can get the biggest screen and he can get the most supercomputers to process the thing the fastest. It's not because, but that catches up to the point where somebody will make a tutorial online where I'm in Touch Designer and I can go build in 30 minutes something that looks very similar to his output, right? So it is more of a collective zeitgeist, and I think focusing on what is the individual is perhaps a mistake. It's an inversion that it is constantly emergent, and it is more in this idea of everybody will have their 15 minutes.
And also, I think it's also sort of the problem, right? Because you want sort of like a free market, a free flow of individuals, an open system. So that means that you won't get any answers to those questions.
And it's sort of, I loved how this sort of sprung this a whole thing that just when I was kind of trying to just formulate what I wanted to say, I realized, oh, hold on a minute, really think about this, because I felt like I was at the cusp of saying maybe something that I didn't think through and then making a giant ass out of myself in the process. And kind of everyone just went a little bit, hold on a minute, there's something interesting about this question altogether. It brought everyone alive a bit. And I think this is, there's something about this exploration of this that is the very reason why we all came into this, and we all have our individual egos and trepidations and landmines that we step into, but I think this is where we're at our most alive, is trying to figure out what this whole thing is, and whilst being alive and capturing it. This feels like crypto art to me. This feels like the essence of why we do what we do.
Yeah, for just to put on my philosophy hat, because I studied, this was sort of my terrain. But for Adorno, it was sort of like a blank canvas. So, basically everybody projects their ideals on that blank canvas, even though there is no ideal, right? So it's basically the search for the ideal that creates the ideal, but never, fully materializes in an ideal. And if it does, it becomes really bad.
I mean, it's a tough one, because even just citing recent history, right? It's like I look at the difference between, like, when I learned surrealism. When I learned surrealism, there wasn't a whole lot on the women of surrealism. There was like one shot of like Dora Maar, and maybe one thing by Merritt Oppenheim, and that was it. And today we have the canons from Dorothea Tanning, we have Leonora Carrington, we have Remedios Varo. And you look at the paintings of these women, it just blows me away. I can't believe I sat through art history classes and never learned about them. And this is what I'm trying to say. This sort of thing happens all the time, where genius artists with like genius collections of art go kind of like under the radar. And then it takes history to discover them. And then artists like me sit down and look at these and they go, holy shit, this is like the best thing I've ever seen. So there's also that. It's like when you're in it, it's really hard to see it and be aware of it and understand it.
Do you think that also has to do with the money? Because of the fact that, like, if an artist is dead, you don't have to pay them?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's also a lot of times, prolific artists, or, like Remedios Varo that I mentioned, she died in her 50s, and she was friends with Max Ernst. She was in Paris. She was part of the In Cloud. She was Spanish. And so you figure she died in like 52. So like in the 30 years she painted, she created 500 paintings. You go look at each one of those paintings. It's mind-boggling. How many artists create 500 paintings like that in 20 to 30 years? So that's a type of genius, but she was completely under-recognized in her time. It could be because she was female, she was from Spain, she dealt with the occult and spiritual things, she kind of was on the outer edges of like surrealism. I mean, there's a lot of explanations. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The point is,
equation.
The work is genius, and the purpose of that type of genius is it inspires me. The purpose of that kind of genius is it inspires a lot of other artists. It raises the bar. It gets us to step up our game. And it's like the vitamins that artists need.
Thereby contributing to that like bricklaying that will go into the eventual ideal.
It's like it makes you realize, look beyond the superficial layers of success and selling money. Look at what somebody did. And that really inspires me. I'm always looking to discover these like under the radar artists that left behind this sort of work, because it really inspires me. It also supports me in aiming for the same. A lot of successful artists in contemporary art, or even the NFT space, don't inspire me. But people like the 500 paintings that she left behind from Remedios Varo, that impresses.
There was, and also, are you?
Go look at her paintings, and you go, "There's 500 of these." Wow, you know.
Hilma af Klint was someone who deeply
I
inspired
did
me.
a hack with Hilma's work when the Guggenheim did the show. Yeah.
But she's a peculiar one because she chose not to have those works published that would have made her the pioneer of abstract art back in the day. And I don't yet understand whether it was because it had spiritual connotations or whether she didn't, or could there be also a bravery issue there that she just didn't have that kind of tenacity to put it out there when she was alive and it was that risky. So it's a little bit here or there. But
also, keep in mind, as a female, it was also harder for her to, benefit 100 years ago to benefit from structures that were in place that supported male artists in selling and getting their work out.
Yeah, but it's also, it's a little bit of a cop-out to say if you didn't publish it while you were alive, then it'd say, oh, it was the male oppression of everything. It's just you didn't put it out there to begin with.
Hold on. Access influences whether you publish or not because of the amount of work you have to put into getting published or putting the work out. And a lot of artists are like, look, I only have this much energy and it's all going to go to the work. And if you are facing insane obstacles as a female did 100 years ago, it's quite plausible, in my opinion, that you would say, I'm not going to put the energy into fighting this battle. I'm going to put the energy into creating this canon of work.
But I think this is the strange thing about the contemporary discussion is that everyone who does anything of importance will face massive opposition, whether you're male or female or what. And I understand that there might be, back in the day that would have been different, but to some degree, but also it's just that it'll take I'm 45 now, and for me to have survived being an artist still and being that full time and still it's been absolute insanity. There's I can't fathom if I would have known that it was going to be this hard on my health, that I was going to nearly lose my life a few times, what it's going to do to my relationships, what it's going to take from me to be an artist. If I would have been given a choice beforehand, despite the amount of just sheer will and tenacity and grit to be here, it's taken every ounce of me and more. I would have never. I probably wouldn't have been able to do it if I would have known. So it's, and I'm nowhere at the peak of success or whatever, and it's still a struggle every day, all the time. So I kind of go no, if you're in the race, no matter what even if you're green and from outer space, you're going to have to give it every fucking ounce of your being every day, all day long, all the time. And then you might have a shot. That's how it is for absolutely everyone.
I agree, but take a moment and to consider, women are half the population of the planet, right? And how many of them are selling at the same levels, proportionately speaking, as men? You don't need me to answer that question. Everybody here knows. So I'm not suggesting there aren't obstacles for men. Absolutely not. But I'd like to point out that there are obstacles that are far greater for other people. And sometimes, in the case of Hilma af Klint, it very well could have been she had this candle in terms of her art practice, and she protected it as best as she could. And on some levels, that meant, I'm not going to fight this war. I'm going to put it all into this as an experience, as a state of being.
Ultimately, I'm just super happy that her expression came about altogether. She's a masterful artist, to the nth degree, and no matter how it came to the world, I'm happy it did. But I'll give a slight example, just shortly, because I'm of a crazy background. I mean, I had copious amounts of trauma since a kid, to the degree that I tried to drown myself when I was 6 due to my family background, and kind of just there's all kinds of craziness that happened from there. And my mom is a feminist, and my dad is a bit of a chauvinist, well, my stepfather. So I kind of grew up in this sort of crazy household of ideas and different kinds of dynamics. And I grew up where my mom was telling me ever since I was a kid that, a woman always earns 70 cents to the dollar and this kind of thing and whatever. And if my not to paint my family badly or in this kind of light, but essentially it was much later in life that I learned that how you get to this 70 cents to the dollar is a lot to do with choice. It has a lot to do with, are you willing to work long hours? Are you willing to move? What kind of profession are you going to choose? Are you going to go into engineering that scales, or are you going to go into humanities, whether you're a nurse or, things like that? And if you do actually take into account the personal choice that men and women do, then the actual difference is either none or 1 cent or something like that. And I was being sold this idea to begin with for the most of my life, and this is why I defended always this whole thing. And to a degree, I suppose I very much defended feminism up until I realized that there were some things that were being sold to me as something that they really actually weren't. And this is what leaves me a little bit confused with a lot of these different things of how much of it has been to systemic oppression and this kind of male chauvinism and all these kinds of things, and how much has it come to personal choice and our different personalities and different kinds of things and what we have inherently when we're women and men and all those kinds of things. So at the very least, there's nuance there. I'm not saying it hasn't been there. I've certainly witnessed sexism.
That's one of the reasons I brought up that her choice may have been to preserve her art practice by not depleting the energy in order to get it out. And so there is such a thing as, yes, and you could cite data that shows women can be more agreeable, they don't fight as much to get ahead or make more money, etc. There's all sorts of explanations, and I'm not suggesting they're not valid. It is complex, but social obstacles, lack of legitimacy to what a woman does, the assumption that there's always automatic intellectual worth and merit to what a man does, but not what a woman does. These existing tendencies are also contributing factors. So you can't dismiss all of them and say, well, I face obstacles. It's the same as Hilma of Klint facing obstacles 100 years ago. I'm not trying to diminish your experience. I truly respect that you have your challenges the same as anybody here. But I'd like to point out 100 years ago, her challenges were far greater than anything any of us know today, right now.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I thought that the whole thing with Hilma af Klint, like Hildegard von Bingen and the others, was that she straight up put the paintings away and said they will not be understood by anybody. And that might just be myth making for the show, but that was my understanding. Seeing the paintings, going to walking by them, was that this is a much bigger mystical expression that can be contained in one lifetime, which is also hilariously what makes it immortal. Because now we're all just trying to puzzle that motherfucker out, aren't we?
Yeah, no, she really, I think, had a sense of like I said, she had this, think of it as a candle, in terms of her intimacy with the, sort of metaphysical and transcendental aspects of what she was doing. And she chose to preserve that through a type of privacy. Yes.
I always found that interesting. I also find it interesting to your point, Marjan, was that I always figured that Kandinsky, I think stole is a strong word that I'll semi-stand by, but was heavily influenced by. I don't know. I know tons of people that are big Kandinsky. It's so funny being artist. Kandinsky has that. I'll start a fist fight by saying that, but I'm pretty sure that was the major was seeing those Hilma af Klint paintings, right?
Yeah,
when nobody could see them.
That is possible. Keep in mind, Kandinsky was the one who coined the term the lawyers and the doctors make the best artists. He was, of course, the lawyer. Dubuffet was the doctor, and he claimed that lawyers, the doctors, made better artists than formally trained artists. So,
as much as I love Kandinsky, I think Hilma was better. I find them profoundly moving when I'm in front of Hilma's things, and Kandinsky, and it's magical and beautiful, and he's has this ethereal quality and all of it. But I think personal preference, of course, being art, but Hilma is much more profound in my opinion.
They're the two that I want to have musicians in front of to just sit down and be please interpret this thing, please come back around to it and respond to either one of these paintings and just come back to me. Would be one of the coolest things ever. Sorry, I was off topic. Let's get back. What makes people famous? Scandal.
Scandal. Anytime you put artists together for a conversation, it's going to be like this. It's like herding cats. Everybody's going to go off in a different tangent and direction, and trying to keep them on subject is almost impossible. But
it makes it fun, right?
That's what
makes it fun.
That's what an artist salon is about, and that's why they're so invigorating, because you get that kind of a rambling conversation.
Yeah, and that's why we said 3 hours. It should be, that should be enough.
Yeah, we're 3 hours in and halfway through the topic, so I think we're going to need round 2. I think we're going to need to regroup again at some point in the future and pick all of this up, because it's super interesting listening. So. But yeah, I think we are closing in on 3 hours. So I'd like to ask you guys, I mean, is there anything that you haven't shared yet that maybe you would like to, whether it's about your personal journey and what that journey might hold for people, for listeners who are listening in, collectors that are interested in what they can expect from you, maybe. And otherwise, if not, just any closing comments, any closing conversations?
I'm going to quickly jump in because I got to just make a couple of announcements. As many of you know, I won the NFT Art Prize last year. I'm on the jury for this year, and I wanted to encourage everybody to submit to the NFT Art Prize, Digital Art Prize for this year. It'll be up at the NFC Summit in Lisbon. There will be an award ceremony. There's a pretty substantial prize money kind of thing associated with it. And your work will go into the amazing collection of Arab Bank Geneva, which is a digital assets management company firm. And they truly believe that digital art and NFTs belong in their digital assets portfolio. They converted their their crypt into a video art display gallery to show their digital art collection, their NFT art collection. So I encourage all of you, I'm in their collection, as are many other artists. I encourage you to submit and to hopefully win. And I also just wanted to quickly throw out, because I have to say these things or else people will get upset with me. I'm going to be at Art Dubai Digital with eSpace Gallery, and also upcoming shows are also Arts DAO in Dubai as well in April, and also a couple of other shows as part of NFT NYC. I will be speaking on the at NFT NYC as well. And yes, I will be in Lisbon NFC Summit. So if you're there, let me know. I'd love to meet you.
Awesome. I want to say something also. I want to thank all you guys and girls for being on the show. I really loved, I love all you guys, and I love the journey with Bitcoin Live, getting to know most of you, and always getting to know new faces. And I love art. I love, what all of you are trying to do, right? You're trying to reach new people, also spreading adoption, which is also amazing. You're all for freedom in every form. So I'm very proud that, we can host people like you and, try our little best to, spread the message to as many people as we can, and all in good cheer and with a good heart.
Mm-hmm. I have only a couple things to say past that for me, because I'm selfish. This week, my one-on-one collectors are going to be surprised by something in their inbox. I'm going to show them. It's going to be wild. Also, anyone that wants a physical piece. No. There's going to be an edition of 10 that's going to come out this week of a painting. It's going to be raffled off. The physical painting is going to be raffled off to one of the collectors that collects the editions this week. And as well, I'm going to be creating, I think it's about time that I created a tarot. So this is the first anyone's hearing of it. So I'm going to be creating a tarot that's going to be printed out into decks. And the cards themselves, I'm trying to figure out whether I'm going to be having them as editions or one of one. But it's going to be a very, very fun journey to make them. It's all going to be based off of the Crowley Thoth deck and the rules that bind that deck. It's gonna be pretty cool.
Crowley.
Very cool.
Yeah, it will be a nice journey through the cards, Andres.
So, I think that's a wrap.
I can still say if we're still.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just basically something that might be useful for other artists as well, as what I kind of, because it's become way too stressful to live from painting to painting or NFT to NFT at this stage in my life. And one thing that started happening a while ago is that we started forming this idea of a luxury art IP company, and now we have the first seed investor. We have On Yavin in the UK with his Syndica is incubating us, and we're kind of launching into a different kind of realm and building a company around something that we're doing, which is interesting, and the different kinds of products that we have. So that's also a part of this whole renaissance, is what is possible for an artist to do. That we are all entrepreneurs, whether we like it or not, and we can adapt different kinds of skill sets in order for us to be able to do and achieve what we want to see in the world. And I think the big thing is that, for me, what really resonates about this idea of Renaissance 360 is what we call it, is how art has become a little bit segmentized, and it's in its own bubble for quite some time. And now, what kind of tools do we have at our disposal in order to bring it out of its own bubble to participate in all different kinds of sectors of life? And what can we do in order to make the world more beautiful as we go about it? And we've been working on these cars in Dubai, the art cars, and that kind of just has this whole idea of how you can turn potentially liabilities into assets, and what kind of a conversation that is. And that's kicking into gear in the springtime. But first and foremost, thank you for including me in the conversation. I shared some deeply personal things here as well, and some of it is not always comfortable to do, and kind of butt heads with some ideas about ideology and everything, and everyone was so civil and nice, and I really I'm more the richer from this conversation, and I thank you all for it. It's been great. And Nicolas, of course, thank you so much as always. You're kind of herding these cats together to have these conversations. And it's great. Really appreciated it.
And we had no hissing. Although I don't know if you noticed or not, but for some unknown reason, when I was doing my intro, my cats were fighting.
Can I say something? A little bit. So I just wanted to thank you to having me here, and to thank to all the people that you are amazing artists. And I want to special thanks to Goldborn and the Mocha Museum, because they were like one of my first collectors, and that is my dream, go further and make me be here now. And so I'm really thankful for that. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to send you a special gift, okay?
Oh, beautiful.
You're nice, super nice. Yeah, I'll say it's been an incredible journey to be here. I think the next years are going to be absolutely wild. The way I kind of see it, 5 to 6 years until we reach like full-on AI economic singularity, in which any specialized skill, be it legal, accounting, is just flattened. So the only thing that will be left for us as humans is to prove and express our creativity, to share it with one another, and this is how we will be advancing. So I'm grateful to be in this room today with so many incredibly talented artists who are leading this. If it is not authenticated on the blockchain, then it just will not exist. We will be living awash in a sea of just images, videos, and what you all do, the just humanity that you bring to this world it's just a blessing to be with you all. So thank you.
So Kitty, do you have any?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody for allowing me to be here today and to get to know all of you. For myself, and I'm sure for the listeners, your perspectives have given us a wonderful insight into this digital art renaissance. And I think it's deepened our understanding of digital art's current landscape, but it's also opened our eyes to the future possibilities as well. And that's what I'm most excited about, I think. Your experiences in particular sort of underscore this exciting journey that lies ahead. And yeah, it's just been a privilege for me to be here today. So thank you very much. Thank you for your engagement, because it's conversations like this, I think, that make it possible, make art profoundly meaningful to everybody so that they can understand it and get a deeper understanding. So thank you. Thank you to Nick. Thank you to Bitcoin Live TV, to Roundly, to Quantum Economics again, and just all the listeners who joined us here today. So yeah, let's go forth, continue to embrace the shape and future of digital art.
And thank you, Kitty, for being such a wonderful host.
Thank you, Kitty.
Thank you.
Good Kitty.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.